This last weekend, I headed down to Dollar General because I grabbed some flower pots that are only $1 each. But first thing, I'm going to grab some 1x4s and mark them at 36 inches. I'm going to cut 4 of these pieces on my miter saw. Once I get them cut, I can lay it down and put over 5 of the pots to make sure they fit perfectly, which they did. Then I'm going to measure the height of the flower pots. I need to make sure I cut a 1x6 that is long enough and tall enough to go over that. So I went at 8 inches. And I'm going to cut these. Since I have 4 of these pieces I'm going to make, I need 2 on each end. That's going to be 8 of these pieces I need. Once I get them all cut, I'm going to run some glue down the 1x3s so that they stick really nice once I nail them in. So this 1x3 is going to go into the 1x6. I'm going to use some brad nails to hold it together. I'm going to do the same on the other side, right down the middle, glue and some brad nails. Once that's put together, I need something that'll go on the sides to hold the flower pots in. And this little 1x2 is perfect. I measured up 2.5 inches, put a couple of brad nails in with glue, turned it around, and I can do the same on the other side. Again, this is a 1x2 with 2 little brad nails on each side, and it holds together just great. Actually, it turned out really nice. I'm going to test it and look at that. It holds all 5 pots perfectly. But I need to drill some holes in the top of the sides because this is where the lag bolt's going to go. So I'm going to drill that out, and then I'm going to lay all 4 of these pieces out. I'm going to measure and make sure they're equally spaced, and then I'm going to take another 1x3 and mark where the holes are. And then right in the middle of that 1x3, I'm going to drill a hole just big enough for that carriage bolt to go through. Now, I'm going to stick the carriage bolt in through on one side, stick it through on the other, and then I'm going to use a washer and a nut to put them together. I'm going to do this up and down all the pieces, and then I'm going to use a ratchet just to make sure they're nice and tight. Once that's done, I'm going to turn it upside down, run some glue, and then I'm going to use a little bit of the scrap 1x3s to hold them together. A little bit of brad nails, clean up the glue, and then it's ready to put it in place. But it's time to plant all the pots. And I'm going to use a variety of different things. This right here is just a little tomato plant. I'm also going to put some marigolds and some spices and stuff in. Once I do that, I'm going to start laying them all up, and I'm going to intertwine all of the different colors and make them look super good. And this thing turned out amazing. It looks great right up there at the front door, and it's low profile. Doesn't take up a lot of room, but it gets plenty of sun. I hope this inspired you to make your own little spice rack or flower pot.
I grabbed a free pallet for this genius garden hack. I used a hammer to remove some of the boards carefully. I left the nails in the boards so that I could use them again. I made 3 rows with 3 boards tight together on the bottom row, 2 boards together in the middle, and 2 boards near the top. The pallet was taller than I wanted, so I used a reciprocating saw to cut the extra off. I flipped the pallet over and followed the same pattern with 3 boards together on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the top. I used all the leftover boards from this pallet, plus a couple extra scrap 1x4s. I cut more 1x4s to fill in the bottom of each section and secured it with 3 nails on the front, and then I flipped it over and I hammered in 3 nails on the back side. I gave the front a quick sand with 120 grit sandpaper using my palm sander. Next, I filled each section with soil and planted my favorite herbs. I used my Cricut to print stencils to paint labels for each section. When applying the stencil, I first sealed it with Mod Podge, and then I let it dry before painting with acrylic paint. Once the paint was near dry, I removed the vinyl and did some touch-ups with my black acrylic paint pen. And now I have the most beautiful herb garden that can also be hung on the wall. I hope this inspired you to create your own pallet herb garden.
Springtime is upon us, and the front of my house is not looking good. Now this is the hard part. We got to clear all of this out, so I got to work. Once I got all that done, I used a large rake to make sure it was level, and I moved the stepping stones. Once I get all of this clear, it's time to grab one 4x4x8 pressure treated board. And the reason I'm going pressure treated is because it's going to go into the ground and that way it won't rot out. I'm going to cut this 8-foot board into 4 pieces, which is 2 feet each. Once I got all my 4 pieces, I'm going to grab some cedar fence pickets. These are 6 foot long, but I'm going to go ahead and cut off just the dog ears on them because I want a straight edge. I'm going to lay these out just like you see in the video here and put some deck screws. These are only 1.5 inches long, and that's all you need to hold them in place. Once I get one side all squared up and down, I'm going to go to the other side. We're going to make 2 exact copies of this, one for each of the long sides. Once I get these screws in, then it's time to put a second board. When these are together, they're going to be 12 inches in depth. And I want to make sure that I get them screwed in again on both sides. Now it's time to make the other ends. I'm going to go 30 inches on those cedar boards, cut those. And again, I'm going to need 2 for each side, so a total of 4. I'm going to go ahead and get these started, lining these up with 2 screws on each end, and then I'll just put them right into the other side of the 4x4 picket. Once these are all in, we're going to go ahead and also do a second board, and that way we have our right depth. Once you get this in, it's actually very strong and easy to move. It's still lightweight. As you can see, we've got our 12-inch depth right here. Now, once all this is together, it's time to dig out where the posts are going to go. So I'm going to use a post hole digger and go in a couple of inches and get that nice and deep. I'm lucky the soil in my area is kind of nice to work with. Once I get that, I can put it in to keep the weed control. That's right, I'm going to use some cardboard. I just lay that down, put some soil on top. Now, the first thing I'm going to put is a filler in. This is not the kind that you're just going to plant directly into. So I just put about 3 bags in and laid it across the bottom right on top of the cardboard. Once I get all this in, now it's time to go to the garden soil. That is what has all the organics and you can plant directly into. I'm going to get 3 bags, fill this up all the way to the top because there will be some settling over the couple of months when spring and summer arrive. I'm going to use a rake to keep spreading it out, break up any large clods that come. I took this out of the garden. I'm going to transplant this. I'm going to put this in, and this root is going to take off pretty good. Then it's time to put all the flowers in. I actually got these on sale at my local hardware store, and it was great. Once I get all of these planted, then it's time to put the stepping stones back in place, and I was able to reuse some of the bark dust, but I'm going to put some new stuff down also. Then it's time for watering. We want those roots to take hold. Do you remember how bad that looked? Look at this. It turned out absolutely fabulous. It gives it a new look, and once I get some new bark dust down, it's going to look great. I think these cedar planters turned out just great, and you can also use them for a retaining wall.
I scooped up this metal filing cabinet from Facebook Marketplace for $25. So to begin my project, I took it out of my van and I put it up on some raised ladders just so it's easier to work with. And I removed all the drawers. I can save the drawers for another project or take them to scrap metal. For this project, I do not need them. Then I'm going to come in with this rust paint that is good for bare or rusted metal. Shade is flat black, and I'm going to paint the entire filing cabinet, the sides, the fronts, and the backs, making sure as well that I get the top parts of the filing cabinet, so the middle pieces where the drawers were. I'm using a foam roller for easy application. I'm going to do 2 full coats and let it fully dry in between each coat. Then I'm going to use my drill and I'm going to drill in some holes in the bottom of my filing cabinet, and these are going to be for drainage. So you can see I've set it up here on my porch. To weight it down, I'm going to be putting in 2 bags of pea stone gravel, and the neat thing about this, since they're just for weight, I'm going to leave them in the bags. That's way if I ever need them for a different project or something else, they're in the bags and I don't have to scoop them out from the bottom. Then I'm going to go to my yard and I collected all these old leaves. This is great because I'm going to fill up the bulk of the cabinet with the leaves so I don't have to waste a lot of my potting mix. So I fill it up till there's about a quarter left at the top, and then I fill that last quarter with my potting mix. I've used potting mix that I bought brand new, as well as some old planters that I had laying around. I dumped in some of that potting mix too. Then I'm going to go ahead and plant in my flowers. So this year I've decided to go with some nice little pansies here, and I'm just planting them into each square of the filing cabinet, giving sufficient space in between. And once those are all planted, this is my finished planter. I am so happy with how this project turned out. Like I said, I scooped this filing cabinet up for $25 and I created something new and trendy with it. These metal large planters, people pay hundreds of dollars in the store or online to have on their porch, and I created mine out of a $25 old rusted cabinet. If you want to recreate this project, I highly suggest checking out places like Facebook Marketplace, thrift stores, or other secondhand places to scoop up a filing cabinet for super cheap. People are constantly getting rid of filing cabinets, so they're not very hard to find. I'm super excited that I was able to share this project with you. I hope that it inspires you to get creative, use old repurposed materials to create something new and fabulous for your front porch without spending a ton of money. Thank you so much for tuning into Home Talk, and we'll see you on another video.